Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's Transformational Tuesday. Good morning. Good morning. Triggered but not broken. Triggered but not broken. We're reclaiming our power in the face of resistance this morning, okay? We're reclaiming our power in the face of resistance. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Listen, empowerment sounds bold, but it doesn't always feel safe, you guys. This week we're talking about empowerment as we wrap up our shape series, right? Becoming self-aware, healing ourselves, having a level of accountability and purpose, and we're wrapping up that shape conversation with empowerment. But listen, empowerment sounds bold, but it doesn't always feel safe, you guys. Many people want to rise, they want to lead, and they want to step into purpose. But the moment they try, right, the moment they try, they get triggered. Okay. Not because they're weak, you guys. I want you to know, not because you're weak, not because anyone's weak. When this happens, it's because we're being stretched. All right. It's because they're being stretched. Right. So this session today is for the ones who are ready to stop backing down when life pushes back and really start recognizing that their triggers are not stop signs. They're not stop signs, you guys. They're mirrors, they're messages, and their momentum. Okay. They're mirrors, their messages, and their momentum. All right. So just a disclaimer for today, this session is about awareness, but awareness without action won't shift your life. It won't shift your life. If you're serious, if you're really serious about living empowered, right, you have to learn how to turn your triggers into your teachers. All right. Not into uh tyrants. All right. So you have to learn how to turn your triggers into teachers, not tyrants. Healing through empowerment. It takes time, it takes tools, and it takes support. So if you're ready to do the work, I do want you to know that Project Life is the space for your growth. Okay. It is the space for your growth. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I hope that on this Transformational Tuesday, you are doing well. You are doing well. I want to welcome you back to our life lessons, right? With Dr. Sheila. If you're new here, I am Dr. Sheila Little. Life Lessons is a part of the Project Life series. And Project Life is truly where we turn theory into practice. All right. So let's take our deep breath. Let's take our deep breath. Let's get present and inhale, right? Inhale courage on this morning and exhale control. Okay. Let's inhale courage and then exhale control. All right. Let's feel our feet on the floor, right? Just getting present, our legs, up our legs, our thighs, our butts, right? Just being present, knowing that it's safe to be in our bodies. Okay. Feeling our butts on the seats, our torsos if we're at work, just feeling our legs as we stand up, our feet on the ground, our torsos if we're laying in the bed, just feeling for our body, wiggling our toes, right? Just getting in our bodies, just getting in the moment. All right. Because this is your moment. No pressure, just your presence. All right. Your torso, your chest, all right, your arms, your hands, just getting really present up your neck, your face, right, your lips, your nose, your eyes, right, just getting real present and then feeling that space around you. All right, feeling that space around you. All right, so before we start, drop a word in the chat that really describes how you're feeling right now. All right. And if you want to challenge yourself, how are you feeling right now about taking a bold action? How are you feeling right now about taking a bold action? I love our conversation about triggers because I think that triggers, introducing this triggers as a different kind of concept. Good morning. Good morning, Tiana. Good morning, Gladys. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Dewana. All right. Um, I love this conversation on triggers because I think that our understanding of triggers is like I'm being triggered, so I need to do this thing. I'm being triggered, so I need to walk away. And in every day, right, every Tuesday, my goal is to really introduce you to see your triggers differently. And today, it's about seeing your triggers as a way of taking empowered action, right? So Dewana says she's feeling encouraged. All right. All right. I like that. I like that, Dewana. Feeling encouraged. All right. So, this session is for you. All right. This session is for you if you've tried to make a move forward, right? But always find yourself stuck in emotional response, right? So you're trying to move forward, but you've always found yourself stuck in an emotional response. You feel like the moment you start standing up for yourself and start stepping into your purpose, right? Something knocks you back, right? So as soon as you start to move and say, okay, I'm going to do better, I'm going to go better, right? Something knocks you back. And then if you're tired of being triggered every time you attempt to grow, right? And you're ready to make a new choice, all right? You're ready to make a new choice, right? So this is who the session is for. All right. So let's start off our session with a powerful quote, right? Listen, triggers don't show you who you are, right? They show you what you still need to heal in order to become who you're meant to be. Listen, triggers don't show you who you are. They really are signals to show you what you still need to heal in order to become the person you are meant to be. All right. That's why I say that this body that God created is such a beautiful vessel, right? It has so many things that that when we learn how to use it, when we learn how to understand it, when we really learn how to work with it, right, then we become, right, the phenomenal beings, or we become aware of the phenomenal being that we were created to be. And then we create a space to allow that presence, right, to coexist with us, right, to coexist. Right. And so if we start to look at our trigger, like, okay, I'm being triggered. What do I need? Right. I'm being triggered. What is that calling me for? Right. Versus let me run away. Let me shut down, all the things that we thought the trigger was meant to do. All right. So let's talk about Maya. Let's talk about Maya this morning. All right. Maya got a promotion. Okay. But immediately felt imposter syndrome. So I get a lot of clients that really struggle, right, with imposter syndrome. If you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's this feeling like I'm I'm hiding. They're going to find out. They're going to find out I'm a fraud. They're going to find out I don't really know what I'm doing. I feel like in some way I'm lying, right? This position I'm in at work is too good and I'm going to lose it because I'm really not smart enough to hold it. This pay that I have, that I'm receiving, am I really deserving of this relationship? This person is treating me so good, but if they really knew who I was, like, would they really stay with me? So it's this constant kind of nudge at you, right? Because you don't feel like worthy, right? In some way, that inner critic is talking to you and making you feel, right, like you're an imposter in your own life, though. And that's the difference. It's in the things that you have accumulated. It's in the work that you have done. You applied for the job. You are doing the work. You're in the relationship, right? But in some way, you don't feel worthy of it and you feel like you're hiding. So that's what imposter syndrome is. All right. So I had a client and she got promoted, but immediately after the promotion, you guys, she felt like she felt this imposter syndrome, right? So in every meeting, she got anxiety, right? So she was triggered with anxiety. Every email, right, that she went to send out, she second guessed her language and how she was going to send that out, but not because she was incapable, right? Not because she read the email 50 times. Everything said she had her supervisor or next person read it, right? So it wasn't that she was incapable. It was because her nervous system didn't feel safe, you guys, in success. All right. Her nervous system didn't feel safe in the success that she had acquired. Her, her old identity was so used to stay safe and stay small. Okay. Her old identity, which was stay safe and stay small, was really clashing with her reality, with her new reality, you guys. Empowerment triggered unworthiness, right? So her ability to empower herself, her ability to say, okay, I can do that job. I'm going to apply for that job and I'm going to go after, and then she got it, right? So, and she got it. And as soon as she got it, it triggered unworthiness in her. All right. I want you to think about, when was the last time you tried to level up and then you felt paralyzed? All right. Let's take a breath with that one. Just breathe. Right. When was the last time you tried to level up in your relationship, your life? You said, I'm going to communicate better. I'm going to do something. Right. And then you felt paralyzed. Listen, that's not weakness. Right. It's a wound asking for attention. Right. It's saying, hey, to sustain this, we have to address that. Okay. To sustain this, we have to address that. All right. Listen, let's talk about what empowerment is. I know yesterday we talked about the stories that come that we tell ourselves, or the beliefs that really stop us from being empowered. But I want you to really understand what empowerment really is, right? So we can all be on the same page. And again, empowerment is not this one thing, right? So we have what's called psychological empowerment. So empowerment is tied to agency. This is agency, the belief that you have the power to influence outcomes in your life. This is a psychological thing, right? So it's your self-efficacy, the belief in your ability, the emotional regulation, right? And the resilience to face setbacks. So this is in your psychology, right? And how you think about yourself. People often feel powerless because of past traumas or conditioning. And psychological empowerment helps you shift from, why is this happening to me, to what can I do with what has happened, right? What can I do with what has happened? Or even more powerful, what can I do with what I have? All right. So that's a psychological empowerment. So the how this ties in with Stop It this week is that, this type of psychology, you're going to have a narrative, or take on a narrative like, stop waiting for someone to give you permission, right? And start acting like the solution is in you. That's psychological, right? I believe that. All right. And then we have something called a spiritual empowerment, right? So spiritual empowerment, this is the belief that your power is not just human, it's divine. Okay. Empowerment here is rooted in your identity in God, in the inner dwelling presence of this divine guidance or strength. All right. So one is our mental, right? And this one is our divine presence, right? So we identify as co-creators with God in this type of empowerment, right? We're trusting the inner voice or the Holy Spirit within us, right? And we're walking in authority, not just our physical ability, not just in my ability to think away, but also because I know that I have this divine presence in me, right? So I'm not just walking in my own ability, I'm walking with the ability of the one who created me, right? So here's the thing, without spiritual empowerment, people may feel like they're striving alone, right? That I'm walking in this life alone because I don't feel this presence, right? This divinity, or I haven't owned it yet, right? But the truth is, you are already backed by your Heavenly Father, right? How do we know that? Because yesterday's scripture said, you will do greater works, right? Than I. That was the promise verse, right? And then it also said that God created you in spirit, uh, didn't create you with the spirit of fear, but of what? But of power, love, and a sound mind, right? So we know that this spiritual empowerment is, we're able to do that because the Creator created us, put these things in us, okay? Then we have what's called an emotional empowerment, all right? Emotional empowerment. So we have psychological empowerment, okay? We have our spiritual empowerment, and now we have emotional empowerment, all right? All right. So this lens actually focuses on owning your feelings without being ruled by them, all right? It is about creating space to really it's about creating a space for your full emotional experience. All right. It's for the full emotional experience. So Gladys said, I'm feeling stuck, but I'm going on in at work. Good morning, Gladys. Right. Well, I hope that today's conversation kind of gets you a little unstuck. And you can always DM me. Right. I know that stuck feeling. I absolutely know it. Right. And I'm glad to know that you're going on. All right. right? Because sometimes that's the empowered action too, right? To to identify and become aware of this feeling of stuckness, right? But moving past it, right? Moving past it. All right. So we have this, good morning, brother. So we have this emotional empowerment. And again, this is a lens where we focus on owning our feelings without being ruled by them, right? It's about creating space for the full emotional experience. A lot of times when I'm working with my clients, most of the time, it's really about this full emotional experience, right? What is our judgments about our feelings? Because we need to get back in relationship with them, right? And we're creating a space for this full emotional experience while still making empowered decisions, you guys. So the characteristics of emotional empowerment is truly self-awareness, right? And emotional regulation, right? You hear me talk about those two a lot, right? Becoming self-aware, and now let's regulate the emotion. All right. And when we talk about regulating the emotion, again, it's the thermostat. What are you on? You're on 70. That's regulate you back to 70. You know, the windows came in. If we're talking about a thermostat in your house, maybe somebody opened the door. You had it on cool air. It's hot outside. You feel the heat come in the house, right? You shut the door. What is that thermostat going to do? It's going to regulate the house back to 70. All right. And so we have the ability to do that too, right? So if we're you know, if a situation happens in our life and I've already set my emotional regulation thermometer on a thermostat on calm, acceptance, peace, right? And something comes in and disturbs that peace, right? I get some message or something happens in life because life is lifing, then once I take that information in, guess what I get to choose? I get to regulate back to peace, right? I get to think about that, become self aware of how I feel, and then I get then to choose how to emotionally regulate back to an emotion that I'm comfortable in. All right. So that is what emotional empowerment is. It's also emotionally honest without over identification, right? So being emotionally honest with ourselves emotion, without over identification. And it's about not outsourcing your peace to other people. um, this is huge, especially in our social media communities, because I think we hear and we say like, I want people to be my peace. I need you to be my peace. You know, but that's not somebody else's job to be your peace, right? That's you emotionally empowering yourself to really do the work, right? So that you can be able to handle life, how life is happening, and being able to regulate yourself. All right. So one of the things that we don't do in emotional empowerment is we don't outsource our peace to other people. All right. Why does this matter? Right. You can't shape your life if you're emotionally hijacked by every trigger in every relationship dynamic, you guys. Emotional empowerment creates inner stability. All right. Emotional empowerment creates inner stability. You don't have to control how you feel to move forward. You just have to choose what you do with those feelings. All right. You don't have to control what you feel. You just have to control what you choose to do with the feelings. I was talking to a client yesterday, and she had very much distanced herself from her emotions, right? And so much so that as I'm seeing her, I can see like the emotion come up, and I can see her battling to feel the emotion as she's talking to me about her experience. And so I asked her a question like, well, what are you doing with those emotions? Because I see them show up on your face. Like I can see your eyes watering, I can see your face getting flushed, right? But what are you doing with the emotions? And she said, oh, I've taught myself to not even deal with those. Like in my mind, I'm telling myself she doesn't need all of that. She doesn't want to she doesn't want to hear that story. She doesn't want to deal with that. And because she was telling herself that I didn't want to deal with her emotions, and that is what she told herself whenever, right? Whenever she also added that she would tell herself when she would start to explain and she would hit an emotional space, how she would talk herself out of it, or she would just shut down, right? And one of the things that I had to give her permission to do in that session was to really just, okay, it's okay. You're safe, right? You're safe. And as soon as I said that, the tears just started to fall, right? Because I needed to empower her to what? To feel safe with this emotion. Like, it's not going to break you, right? It's not going to break you. I'm not going to judge that. And for this moment, right, in this time, right, the tears can fall. All right, let's just give it its space here, you know. And so as the tears fell, right, she was able to release more because now the chatter stopped in her head and she empowered herself, right, emotionally. So you don't have to control how you feel, right, moving forward. You just have to choose what to do with those feelings, you guys. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. All right. Right. You have to choose what to do with those feelings. And a lot of us are choosing not the empowered action. We're choosing to disempower their feelings, to set them to the side, to bury them. Right. And then we're wondering, well, why am I carrying this weight? Why do I feel so disconnected? Why don't I want to engage with people? You know, why do I feel like I'm not choosing myself anymore? Why do I feel like I'm putting myself on the back end? You know, why do I have this resentment against other people? Right. And a lot of times it's because of this, right? Because we're not in relationship with ourselves anymore. And we're saying that, you know, in our minds, like, oh, they don't want to deal with that, or they don't want to deal with this, or, you know, and the truth of the matter is that we're programming ourselves to not feel these emotions. And we need a safe space to be able to re-engage back within our emotions, right? And to have a space to be able to talk about those things, right? So that we can so that we can digest those emotions. All right. We also have what's called behavior empowerment. Okay. This is where empowerment becomes visible, right? So it shows how people show up. It shows how people, I'm sorry, it's how people show up, how they act, and how they live out their beliefs that they hold on the inside, right? So this is all about taking aligned actions despite our fears, really setting standards and boundaries, right? Setting boundaries and enforcing our standards, right? And practicing consistency, even in our imperfections, all right? Empowerment doesn't, Empowerment that doesn't lead to action, you guys, it's just inspiration, right? It's just inspiration. So behavior empowerment, it really puts your inner work into motion. Okay, it puts your inner work into motion. It reminds me of what's coming up in my spirit is like, don't talk about it, be about it, right? So we're talking about this shift, and we're talking about these changes that we're talking about these shifts. I'm sorry. We're talking about these shifts. We're talking about these changes that we want in our life, right? But are we taking the imperfect actions, right, to really build the consistency that will eventually build the momentum? All right. And those actions in the beginning, guess what? They're going to be imperfect, and that's okay, right? That's okay. We're learning. We're on the learning curve, so we're going to sometimes have to get it wrong. What? Before we get it right, we got to build the habits. Okay. We're going to have to build the habits. All right. So your life will rise or fall to the level of your consistent choices. All right. And as we start to shift those choices, right, as we start to change our behaviors, we start to change what our circumstances. All right. And then we have relational empowerment. Um, so this empowerment, this is about how you show up in your relationships, in your conversations, in your communities from a place of wholeness, not from a place of people pleasing or fear. All right. Not from a place of people pleasing or fear, you guys. All right. All right. So this is about speaking your truth with love, you know, releasing those codependent behaviors and really owning your space, you guys, and not shrinking. All right. Owning your space and not shrinking. Why does this matter? Because you can't stay empowered in your relationships, in relationships that keeps you disempowered. All right. You can't stay empowered in relationships that keep you disempowered. Right. So this lens actually encourages you to create environments that support your growth. Like I said, a lot of us are using our primary environments, like our relationships and our kids and our friends, to be the environment that also empowers us, that also helps us to heal, that, you know, does all this extra stuff. And maybe that is a good environment for your social person, or, you know, or that person that you feel that part of you that's relational, right? But we definitely still need to make sure that we are getting ourselves in environments that empower us, right, as an individual, so that we're not dependent on anyone else. That is our responsibility. All right. Empowerment is not um it's not domination, you guys. It's liberating, right? It's liberation from you and those around you. All right. So empowerment is not domination, right? It's liberating you, right, and those around you. Remember the quote Marianne Williamson, it's not as we shine our light, what do? We give other people permission to do the same. That's liberation. As we stand boldly in our truth, what does that do? It allows other people what to stand boldly in theirs, right? Right. And sometimes when that happens, right, it's like, oh wow, And sometimes it can happen. If we see it happening, you tell your truth. Just say it's an argument, and this is what's coming up in my spirit. We see this. Just say you go to say something, and it's your truth, and the person hasn't healed, or a person hasn't fully doesn't know how to communicate, and they say, "Oh, so we telling the truth now? That's what we're doing, right?" And so they'll tell the truth, but it's in it may be unrefined, right? But it may be hurtful, right? But your ability to stand in your truth did what? Made this person now say, "Oh, so we're telling the truth." Now, what they intended to be hurtful, it probably did hurt, but what your empowerment did was what? Bring the truth to the surface, right? That's how that looks, right? That's how that looks. So I want you to know that empowerment it's not domination, right? It's really liberation. All right. And then our last one, okay, empowerment of systematic and social empowerment. Okay. So some people are disempowered, right, as a culture. Some people are disempowered in their systems, and some of us are disempowered by generational cycles. All right. So addressing empowerment at this level, right, at this level really helps people see that their personal transformation also has a collective impact. So this is when we start talking about breaking generational cycles, right? Using your voice what to impact people who don't have a voice, right? Reclaiming your narrative, your identity, your values, right? And your visibility. Why? So I can speak for those who don't. Okay. So we talk. So this type of this systematic and social empowerment is bigger than you, right? So I'm doing this individual change. I'm being the change that I want to see in the world because I know doing that is going to have this what domino effect. Okay, it's going to have a domino effect. All right. And those are the different type of empowerment. So the psychological, how we think, our spiritual empowerment, right? Our emotional empowerment, behaviors, how we behave in our relationships, right? How we relate to each other, right? And then our system or, cultural. Okay. So with that, I want you to know that empowerment is truly about owning your power, right? Trusting the God within you, and then acting like what you've been learning is already yours, right? It's already yours, you guys. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a breath because that was a lot, right? Those understanding. Oh, so it's not just one thing that I'm being empowered in. No, we're being empowered in your mind. You can be empowered in your behaviors. You can be empowered in your spiritual walk, right? Using your divine gift, you can be empowered when you're saying I'm breaking generational curses, right? That's a cultural empowerment. You're doing it for something bigger than yourself, right? And so when we can look at empowerment from these different lenses, right? It's like okay, now and then looking at it as a puzzle piece that all fits together. Okay, that all fits together. All right. So let's breathe, right? And what I want you to think about is what emotions, as I was talking about that, rose, right? When you think about taking bold action and speaking up for yourself. Okay. And what does those feelings really remind you of? What does those feelings really remind you of? Okay. All right. What does those feelings remind you of? Because triggers are emotional messages, you guys, not enemies. They aren't the problem. They reveal the problem. Okay. What this means is that empowerment will always surface anytime that uh empowerment will always surface anything that threatens your old identity. All right. Empowerment will always surface anything that threatens your old identity. If you consistently or constantly, if you are constantly triggered when you lead, when you grow, and when you make bold moves, it's not that you're not ready. Okay. And I want you to not see that as, okay, I'm not ready because I'm keep getting triggered by this, or this person keeps triggering me. No, it's that your body doesn't know it's safe yet. Your body doesn't know that empowered decision, that empowered action, that empowered thought, that empowered alignment that you've chose to step into your divinity, right? That empowered cultural stance of breaking generational curses, right? It's not that, and when you're being triggered, when you go to do that, it's not that you're doing something wrong. It's that your body doesn't know that it's safe yet. All right. And that's okay. Right. You weren't meant to shrink, you guys. Your power isn't dangerous, right? It's divine. But if you don't know how to regulate your emotions, right, you'll keep mistaking growth for danger, right? It's in the nervous system. Again, when we talk about trauma and being a disadvantaged population and things like that, I really need you guys to understand that we have a nervous system, right? And that nervous system is, you know how we see people like red flag? Guess what? That's happening on the inside of us, right? When you see a person's behavior and you're like, oh, that's a red flag for that, or oh, that's a red flag. Mind you that there is a language, an unspoken language in you, right? That's like when you go to do that, that's alerting, that's a red flag, right? And it's sending signals, and it's creating angst, and it's creating loud, an inner critic, right? That's speaking to you in a way that's making you what? Back down and disempower yourself when you know that this is what you want. And again, that's why having clear goals, right? Who are you becoming? Understanding your values, right? Going and doing the work and getting the clarity about and getting clear about what it is you want, right? So when something in your mind, in your system says red flag, right? You already understand why it's doing that, and you are anchored in a different spot. So you're not anchored in a trauma. So you're not shrinking back to the little girl or the little boy that was voiceless, right? You can stand boldly in the person you're becoming, right? In the person you're becoming. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. All right. So again, if you're consistently triggered when trying to lead, grow, and make bold moves, I want to just remind you that it's not that you're not ready, you guys. It's that your body doesn't know that it's safe yet. All right. You're not made to shrink. All right. Your power isn't dangerous. It's divine. But if you don't know how to regulate those emotions, you guys, again, you'll keep mistaking growth for danger. All right. I once worked with a client who would break down every time she tried to speak on camera. All right. She realized her fear wasn't about public speaking, right? It was about being seen after years and years and years of feeling invisible. Okay. Once we were able to unpack the root of that, her voice became what? Her healer, right? Her voice became her healer, and it started to heal other people. All right. All right. So I want you to know this: neuroscience shows that when we experience triggers, our amygdala oblongata, you know that word, right? The amygdala oblongata, I can never say this word, right? Really activates a fear response. Oblongata, I think that's what it is. Good morning, Mariah. Really activates a fear response, even if the threat isn't real. even if the threat isn't real, you guys. Listen, empowerment work requires learning how to calm down our nervous system, right? So let's breathe. So let's do that right now. Just breathe. This is information, right? And sometimes new information can do what? It can tense us up, right? It can, cause a different conversation to happen, right? So empowerment work really requires us to calm down our nervous system and rewire our reaction to perceived danger. And I want to say perceived danger because it's not real, right? But the mind doesn't know that. And so it's doing what it's supposed to do, which is again, as adults, the responsibility that you have as an adult to really step into the driver's seat and really start to really say, hey, I'm safe. You see, I'm safe. We can breathe, right? But when we allow the train mechanism, the triggers and what and all of that to take over, right? Now we are reacting to the trigger, right? And we don't allow ourselves to take the time to really be empowered to make a different decision when these triggers occur. Oh, I'm being triggered. What does that mean? First, let me breathe. Let me pause. Then we're going to talk about that. All right. All right. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. Put a heart in the chat for me. Good morning, Miss Mariah. Good morning, Miss Mariah. All right. So we know that the T in the Stop It framework really stands for triggers, right? And this lesson is a direct reflection of this T. All right. Triggers are random, right? They're reminders of where we need to repair. They're just reminders of where we need to repair. And if you're consistently or constantly triggered when stepping into your calling, that's not a weakness, you guys. It's wisdom. It's wisdom really calling you deeper. All right. These are some of the narratives that we have to start to shift, right? So we have to become what self-aware of the narratives, right? And not look at these triggers as weaknesses, but as, oh, this is my divine wisdom calling me to take what? A different action, to maybe explore a little more, to take note of that, and then what? Bring that to a community or get an expert or get someone to help me to truly unpack that. All right. All right. So here's some things, some triggers that really stop us from being empowered. All right. Because that is the core of today's conversation. All right. What triggers really stop us from being empowered? Listen, the fear of judgment, the fear of judgment. What will people say if I change? Right? This trigger is truly just the trigger root of this is childhood experiences where being too much made you feel uncomfortable. Where you were expected to show up, a way. And if you didn't show up that way, there was this perceived or this punishment, right? Right. So this childhood experience of being too much or having this standard, right, really made, having this standard either. So being too much made other people feel uncomfortable. And then you kind of felt uncomfortable because there was this standard put on you, this need to show up in a way, right? And so now you have a fear of being judged as anything other than perfect, good, right, right. And so what is the empowered truth? Let me tell you, you wouldn't you weren't created, you was not created to shrink for other people's comfort. All right. You wasn't created to shrink for other people's comfort. Now I know that you were taught to shrink for other people's comfort, right? As kids, what are we taught to do? Be quiet, respect your elders, don't say that, even if it was your truth, right? Right. Don't embarrass people, right? So we got these micro messages when we were younger, right? To shrink and stay in a child's place, but you're an adult now, right? And as an adult, right, you wasn't created to shrink to make other people feel comfortable. All right. The second thing is just a fear of rejection or abandonment. All right. If I outgrow this circle, will I be alone? This is a real thing. All right. I work with a lot of individuals that come to me and we're dead middle in the work, or maybe finna start to work. And a big reason why they're not choosing to do the work is because something about them understands that if I start to work on me, there's a possibility that I will lose them. And so they have this me versus them mentality, right? And and I've even heard it as if I feel guilty for choosing me, right? I'll feel guilty for choosing me over them. And then I would say, well, do you feel guilty for choosing them? Yes. But in some way, right, we will absorb the story that I'm strong enough to carry it. They don't have the strength, right? What would they do without me? Right? If I'm the helper, I'm the one, right? So if I walk away from them and I choose me, how are they going to make it? All right. So this fear of rejection or abandonment is real. So we don't choose ourselves because we don't want to abandon people, right? The ones we love or the ones who love us. And as a consequence, right, we abandon ourselves. Okay. So, but we do have a fear of rejection or abandonment, right? Because we don't want to outgrow our circle, and really wonder why I belong. This is rooted, trauma is tied to belonging, right? Especially, in our families, in our faith, in our friendships. And guess what? Even in our jobs. I remember when I worked as a college counselor, and I knew that I need to get out the job. I was calling in sick. I had FMLA. I had like signed up all of my FMLA. Like I knew that the job was truly just stressing me. It didn't fit or align with my personality traits. But there was this sense that I was abandoning my people, right? Like I was the only African American counselor, and I felt like I did this great work with the students that I had encountered. And if I left them, right, who would come back? Who would replace them? Who would they have that would truly serve them, right? So I felt this fear of really empowering myself to move on, and start my business, because I didn't want to abandon, right, these students or these workers, right? So we can see this show up in different ways. All right. Like I said, with our family and our faith and our friendships. And of course, I made the empowered action where I did leave and I started shaping solutions. But again, I empowered myself to do that. But I want you to know that this feeling of abandonment was there. All right. All right. Here's the truth. Growth will always test your relationships, you guys. It will always test your relationships. But the right ones will stretch, not shatter. The relationships that's for you, they will stretch, but they won't shatter you guys. All right. Put a heart in the chat if you felt that, right? So yes, yes, growth will test these relationships with our faith, with our family, right? In our friendships, right? But if they're the right ones for us, right, they'll stretch. There's gonna be some conflict, but they won't shatter. All right, they won't shatter. All right. This fear of failure, right? This fear of failure. What if I try and fall flat? All right. Just early conditioning. Where did this trigger come from? Just early conditioning that equated mistakes to worthiness, to worthlessness. I'm sorry. Right. So when you made a mistake, you were not good enough. You were worthless, right? Here's the empowered truth about this. Failure isn't the opposite of success, you guys. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It is a part of the process that really builds resilience. I really want you to see that. When we think about success, I think that we think about the opposite of success being failure, right? And so we don't want to fail. But if we really just take failure out the equation and just say, okay, success is what it is, right? And define what success is for all of us, right? For each and every one of you, just define what success is. And then we define what failure is and see failure as a part of the process that really builds your emotional resilience, right? Your, just your resilience altogether, and that it's a part of the learning curve. Yep, I got it wrong, but what did I learn from that? Right? And being able to do that, I think will help us to become more resilient, right? And take what? More empowered action. But this fear of failing is really what's stopping us from what? Taking the empowered emotional action, right? Even so much with our divine empowerment, right? This idea that we have to be perfect to be in relationship with God. Like, oh, I got to get my life together before, I tapped into my divine wisdom. Well, it's there. You can activate it. Maybe it's, maybe activating it will help you to have more compassion and forgiveness, right? And so we have this fear of failure. Okay. Fear of success. Again, what if I do succeed, right? What if I do succeed and can't maintain it? We understand that fear of success really does have to do with sustainability, right? So feeling unworthy of good things and unsure of how to hold this new power, like how is I'm going to sustain this? It's something very different about life when you start to live it, right? It's a different level of activity that you understand is required, right? When you start talking about successful relationships, success in our health, success in our finances, right? There's a different level of activity or presence that success itself holds, right? And so because we sometimes are so used to playing small and being dormant and not active, when we think about success and we think about this empowered action, there is the whisper of, can I sustain that? All right. Can I sustain that? Because I'm so used to what? Being a B student, being a C student, not really showing up. And I know that taking this action is going to require me to what? To show up. And so there's a different relationship now that I'm building with my behaviors. And that's going to naturally build what? These questions in you and make you feel like, that there's some unworthiness or that you're not deserving or that you can't maintain the success. But I just want you to know that you can, right? You can. You have the wherewithal to build a relationship with success and sustain it. Okay. Listen, you are not only worthy of your success, you guys, you are capable of sustaining it through your grace and structure. Through grace and structure. All right. And then the last one is just unworthiness. This is the one of the hugest triggers that really stop us from taking empowered action. All right. This unworthiness. Who am I to do this? Just this unworthiness feeling, right? So this is really just rooted in the inner critic, which is shaped by comparison, shame, and rejection, right? I do want to empower you and let you know that you do not need to earn your worth. You don't need to earn your worth. You only need to own it, right? You don't need to earn your worth. You already worthy. You just need to own that, okay? You just need to own that. All right. So when triggers arise, many people assume that they're off track. When these triggers arise, when this unworthiness, this fear of success, this fear of failure, this fear of rejection or abandonment, or this fear of judgment, when these things start to arise, many people feel like what they're off track. But actually, these triggers are proof that you're in the transformational zone, you guys. You're in it. What I need you to do is four things. I need you to recognize the trigger without shame and judgment. Oh, that's that unworthiness coming up. Oh, that's that fear of success. Tap it in, right? I need you to just recognize it and not judge it. All right. I need you to pause. Just pause and breathe. Okay. Oh, that's that fear of failure. Just get present, right? And then respond with intention, right? Respond with intention. What am I going to do? Now, don't let the old narrative, right, come in and direct your steps or your behaviors or your thoughts, right? And here the responding is sometimes where that's where we need the word, because it's like, well, I don't know how to respond with intention. Okay, well, that's where you go get support. Maybe you don't know how to recognize it. Okay, well, that's where you need to get the support. Maybe you don't know how to pause. Okay, well, maybe that's where you need the word. And then the last thing is the reframe the message through your empowered identity. So maybe you can recognize it. Maybe you know how to pause. Maybe you can respond with intention, right? But maybe you get stuck in that pattern and you haven't learned how to reframe the message through an empowered lens. So you don't know how to use different language, right? And so maybe that's where you need the help, right? Any place that you need the help is okay. Again, just being an adult and saying, hey, this is my life. I only get one. Let me go and seek out the guidance so that I can recognize, pause, respond, and reframe, so I can start taking more empowered action. Listen, empowerment isn't just about doing big things, you guys. It's about becoming someone who no longer betrays themselves about the small, uh, betrays themselves to stay small. All right. So empowerment isn't just about doing big things. It's about becoming someone who no longer betrays themselves to stay small. It's also in becoming the person who is willing to allow act to always activate your own. I said that wrong. In becoming that person will always activate your old protective patterns. All right. So I'm gonna say it again. Empowerment isn't just about doing big things, you guys. It's about being someone who no longer betrays themselves to stay small. And becoming that person will always activate their old wounds. What am I saying? As you're becoming the person, as you're becoming and empowering yourself, it's going to always activate old patterns. What does that mean? So you're always going to be triggered, right? This old version of yourself is always going to, in some way, be triggered in the narratives, maybe even in how you feel in your body. And so what we do is we override that, right? With some, learning how to meditate, learning how to breathe, doing breath work, right? Becoming aware of our stories, right? All of these things we integrate, in the work. Because here's the good news. You can be triggered and still choose your truth. All right. You can't feel fear and still move forward. You can still feel fear and move forward. You can honor your emotions without leading with them, you guys. You can feel the fear and still move forward, and you can honor your emotions without letting them, lead you. All right. Right. If that makes sense, drop a heart in the chat, or if you like that, drop a heart in the chat for me. All right. And then we're gonna move to our biblical wisdom on this morning. Listen, Proverbs 4:23 to really support everything that I said earlier. I want you to know that above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. All right. So Proverbs 4:23 says above all things, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. All right. We're talking about triggers, and I talked about these 6 triggers, right? Or 5 triggers. The fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of success, and the fear of unworthiness, right? And how those fears really stop us, right? Stop us from taking empowered action, and why, right? And so I wanted to talk about this verse, guard your heart. Above all things, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it, right? Listen, triggers show you what's hurting your heart, you guys. Guarding your heart doesn't mean hiding. It doesn't mean putting a shield over your heart, right? It means healing, right? Because as we start to do empowered things, you guys, right? We start to open. Our hearts start to open. And when we're guarding it, or when we become responsible, because that's what the guard is, right? Responsible. It's like, oh, that hurt. That's a trigger. Let me go now and do something about that. Let me go now and fix that. Not let me put another wall. Not let me put a wall up so that I won't feel that. Because the Bible said, guard my heart. Guarding my heart is protecting. And when I'm protecting something, when I know that there's a wound there, I'm going to go get that wound healed. That's a part of protection too, right? So it's not just about, and it's not just about protection. It's about intention, right? It's about my intention as I'm guarding my heart. Okay. The heart in Hebrew culture represent your inner being. All right. It represents your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, and your identity. Okay, so this verse really reminds us that our inner world really shapes our outer world. All right, our inner world really shapes our outer world. Triggers aren't triggers often arise from unhealed wounds in our heart. All right, remember we talk about this next relationship or this next season is the what? Move from our heads to our hearts, right? Because that's really where the real healing has to happen. All right. So triggers often arise from unhealed wounds in our hearts. If we don't intentionally guard your heart, right, by becoming aware of what you're absorbing, believing, and internalizing, your power leaks, right? And so you start reacting instead of responding, right? So if we don't become aware of what we have absorbed, what our beliefs are, and what we are internalizing, right? Our power really starts to leak, you guys, and we start to react instead of respond. All right. So guarding your heart means really filtering the voices that you allow in. The biggest voice really being the inner critic, right? Not the voices outside of you, but this inner critic. What is it telling me about me? And really being a listening for that. All right. It means becoming emotionally aware and not emotionally reactive. All right. I'm going to become aware of these feelings that's happening in my body. Right. So that I can do what? I can respond. And if I don't know how to do that, right, or if I'm on a learning curve, I'm going to have compassion for myself and I'm going to go seek the help. Right. And it means protecting your energy and peace as sacred as a sacred ground for your purpose, right? So this protecting your energy and peace is truly I now become the adult. I get to go into manual, right? So protecting your energy and peace is you become the adult. Again, I say I'm talking to adults. So we're not giving that responsibility to people. We're stepping out of codependent relationships and saying, Mama, you the reason why, and Daddy, you the reason why, right? No, I am now the adult, right? And so a part of me protecting my peace is to become the parent to this inner child, to let that inner child know that we're safe as we move forward in our life, right? I got you. And whatever I need to do as an adult to make sure that I'm keeping you safe, then I'm going to do that. All right. Because if everything I do flows from the conditions of my heart, listen, then healing and self-awareness are not optional, right? They're, they're essential. And that is empowerment, right? Right? That is the empowerment. If everything I do truly flows from my heart, right? If everything I do flows from the conditions of my heart, then healing and awareness, they are not optional, right? It's not optional that I go get the help and unpack these things, right? Their healing and self-awareness are the empowered actions that I take. Okay? All right. If that makes sense, put a 3 in the chat for me. All right. And then we go into our promise verse, Isaiah 41 and 10. So do not fear, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and I will help you. All right. So even when triggers shake you, you're not alone, you guys. God's presence is your peace. All right. I do want you to know that there's an ever presence around you, right? And that's why we pause and we breathe and we realize that there is an ever presence around us as adults. And that's one of those shifts that we have to make, right? That there is an ever present, all seeing God, right? That when I can step back and I know that this omniscient, you know, presence is here in this, and I don't have to do this alone. Even if I can say that in my pause, it may not take away the feeling, but it may help me in how I respond with it or to it. All right. So this is God's personal promise of his presence and support. So not this distant deity in the sky, you guys, but this divine strength within you that that rises when fear tries to really pull you under. All right. Right? This divine presence that truly rises when fear tries to pull you under. Listen, when you are triggered, by fear, by doubt, by old narratives. This verse is here to remind you or to become your anchor. Listen, empowerment doesn't mean that you're never afraid. That's not what it means. It means you learn how to move through fear with your divine confidence. All right. So do not fear doesn't mean pretend fear doesn't exist, you guys. Right? It doesn't mean do not pretend that fear doesn't exist. It means you don't have to be ruled by the fear. All right. I am with you reminds you that the divine presence or divine power is not out there, right? It's in you, right? I am with you is there to remind you that this divine presence is not out there, it's in you, guiding you and strengthening you from within. Okay, so this verse is truly an invitation to walk in courage, not because of the path, not because the path is easy, you guys, but because you're never alone, right? I don't have to run from my triggers. Okay, this is what I want you to say. I don't have to run from my triggers. I can face them knowing that I'm supported, strengthened, and spiritually equipped. All right. Okay. I want you to also repeat after me. I am empowered from within. I can guard my heart and grow through my triggers because divine strength really lives in me. And that is what that verse is really saying. I think that these verses are great compliments for today's lesson because they ground this session both in spiritual truth and emotional wisdom. Okay. I am not empowered from within. I am empowered from within. I can guard my heart and grow through my triggers because the divine strength lives in me. All right. All right. If that made sense, put a heart in the chat, you guys. If that made sense, put a heart in the chat. All right. Okay. So here's our action steps. All right. So here's our transformational tool for this morning, this transformational Tuesday. I want you to name the trigger. All right. So when I feel blank, I usually do what? Right. This is all about becoming self-aware. Right. And then I want you to trace that root. All right. So where did you learn that this emotion equals danger? Right. So when I do one of those things I talked about, right, when I try to empower myself mentally, right? So we talked about the different ways that we empower ourselves, which was the psychological, right? Just taking agency over who I am. When I try to step into my divine power, or when I step into, become emotionally empowered, right? And really start to become self-aware and speak my truth emotionally, right? In my relationships, right? When I'm releasing codependency and start to really speak my truth in love, when I start to do that, or when I'm starting to try to break these generational curses, right? And using my voice as an impact. When I when I feel that, right, I usually do it, right? Or when I feel judgment, reactions, fear, success, or unworthiness, I usually do it. Okay, you can add any of those to that. And then I want you to say, where did I learn that at? Right? And then what's a more empowered action I can take right now? All right. And then the journal, what truth do I want to return to the next time I'm triggered? All right. And then the affirmation for today. My trigger is not my enemy. They teach me. They are my teachers. I choose truth over fear. All right. All right. My triggers aren't my enemies. They are my teachers. I choose truth over fear. All right. And then daily intention today, I will allow my triggers to lead me to healing, not hiding. I will allow my triggers to lead me. Okay. Okay. And then our bonus, listen, catch one of your triggers today. And instead of reacting, I want you to pause. I want you to reflect and I want you to respond. All right. Then share that shift with me if you would. You can DM me or you can share it in this chat. And then now it's time for our call, challenge, and charge. So Listen, what's one truth did you reclaim today? That's the call. The challenge is, what brave action will you take the next time you're triggered? Okay. And then the charge today is to not let your triggers silence your purpose. Okay. Let them shape your healing. Let them shape your healing. All right. If today's session, listen, resonated with you and you're walking away with some insight, drop a fire in the chat and let's celebrate our growth. I really need to get one of those little, and the little things that, the little clapping hands, right? Right. This is just the beginning. Like I told you guys in our coaching lab, right? We will have this conversation on Thursday. If you want to be a part of that conversation and you're ready to go deeper, right? That growth membership is really there to provide you with the tools, the structure, right? In the soul, right? That because your growth deserves more than just this moment. It deserves a containment, right? So you can always go to SheilaLittle.com/life to join that membership where we have those coaching labs. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Listen, invite a friend. If you haven't already, invite a friend to that Facebook group, Elevating Life with Sheila Little Facebook group, where we engage every day. Tiana said today was great. Thank you. No problem, Tiana. Thank you so much for staying for the session. All right. And then I want you guys to remember, if you can shape it in your mind, you guys, you can have it in your life. Listen, I love you. I love you. I love you. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow's conversation where we're going to talk about the obstacles to, empowerment, right? The obstacles that we face when stepping into empowerment. We've talked about the stories. We've talked about the struggle, the triggers. Now we're going to talk about those obstacles, right? And how to turn them into opportunities to really empower ourselves, right? To become the best versions of who we are. I love you. I love you. I love you. Till later. Till later.